What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Real Life on the Wellspring podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Craig.
I am excited to get into this conversation today. And when I say excited, I mean maybe a little nervous.
Right. I wasn't thinking excited at all. We were having a little discussion before and you started talking about the what we're going to talk about here. And I'm thinking, I'm a little nervous about it too. So nervous excitement.
Yeah, nervous, maybe possibly a little insecure about what we might be talking about.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, so what I want to spend some time talking about in the episode today is insecurities, feeling insecure. I think that is something that all of us experience.
This is real. It's very real.
If we're going to talk about real life, what I experience in my day-to-day life and how I'm supposed to relate to other people, how I'm supposed to have a relationship with God, pursue a relationship with God in real life, I think it's good to have a conversation about
this thing about insecurity, this attitude of insecurity is going to be, it's going to come up. It's going to float to the top.
Yeah, especially now I feel like, I think this is like partly human nature, right? Part of the human experience. I think, I don't think it's, people are only insecure now. But I definitely think with social media and the expectations that you have on yourself versus what you put on other people, I definitely think that heightens it a whole lot.
Sure.
But I think it's worth having a conversation about insecurity.
Yeah.
So
although I've got a couple more years age than you, Brian, and I think there's some things that I was pretty insecure about back in the dark ages as well.
Back in the dark ages.
We'll always like to think, it's so much harder for us today. And yes, social media is a pain in the butt. Yeah. But you're right. This is a human condition since Adam.
Yeah. Even in the dark ages of dial-up, it was still
right.
Hey,
I was alive before internet, so that's old.
Yeah, that's old. He said.
Yes, and we had insecurities back then too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I think it's just part of what we experience, and it's not a great part. I think a lot of times when I look back at my own life, or the people who I love, when I see myself interacting through my insecurities,
oh my goodness,
relating to people through insecurity, when I think back at that, most of what I'm looking at is brokenness that I've introduced into relationships based on my insecurities.
You mean it's not their fault?
Yeah. Believe it or not, I might have wanted to blame them, right? So when we say I'm insecure about something,
let's give a definition.
Yeah, what's the definition of insecure? I think you pulled it up here.
Yep. So the definition from the dictionary is to be not firmly fixed, to be liable to give way or to break, and it means to be not confident or assured, or to be uncertain and anxious.
I don't think that describes anybody.
Yeah, I've never been there. No.
I don't.
I've never had this problem at all.
Or anxious. I've never felt fixed. Right.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to feeling insecure or dealing with my insecurities, there's a couple ways that you can kind of look at it that I think are all true because we've all experienced insecurity in different ways. One of them is kind of what you alluded to. It's someone else's fault. Right. I'm feeling insecure because of external circumstances. Right. It's something out there. It's someone that I know or that I'm relating with.
Right. So when I sit next to you, I feel insecure about my muscles because you work out and I don't.
Yes. I don't think that that's true, but the fact that you would even say that makes me feel great about myself.
But that's a really simple example of something how in just being with other people, we notice things that they're better at than me.
For sure.
I feel somehow lacking. I feel somehow anxious. Somehow
I feel
less than.
Yeah, I feel like all of a sudden it introduces all kinds of fear, as if I'm inadequate.
Yes.
What I'm doing or the direction that I'm heading, like man, it feels. One of the things that it said is not confident, unassured, uncertain, anxious. One of the definitions is liable to give way or break.
Yep.
I love that definition because I think it's very descriptive of how that would make of how I felt based on external circumstances.
Right.
Is that the direction that I'm heading or the relationship that I have or how I feel about myself, I'm liable to give way or just break at any minute.
Yep.
And it's easy for me to point towards something external and say, that's the issue.
Right.
If I could just change this person, if I could just remove this person from my life, then all my insecurities would disappear instantly.
Yeah, and there's so many examples of this. And my goodness, I just, as we were talking about this, I think it's so many examples of times when I felt insecure. And I think, we spend an enormous amount of time of our life at work. And so that's a place where a lot of these insecurities come up.
Oh, yeah.
Where the boss says, hey, you need to do this better, or I need you to do this, and you can't. And immediately you have this feeling of, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to break, or I'm going to give way.
Yeah.
Because there's just something in me that says I'm not sure I can do this, or who does he think he is that he gives this to me, or
asking me to do this impossible thing, or even like in a work environment or just a relational environment with people. There always seems to be some sort of like in crowd. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you remember being in school and there's like this in crowd, and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can ever crack into the in crowd. There's something about this group of people that I don't have, or whatever it is. And it might be something that you view as better than what you have, or if it's at work with this person makes more money than I, this person's more successful than I am, whatever it is. And we want to point at all of these external things, and it makes me feel insecure, and it's the fault of all these external things.
Yep.
I've certainly been guilty of doing that. Like, there's
on a regular basis. Guilty as charged.
Yeah. So that's one way to look at insecurities. And if you're watching this, like, I don't know, kind of in your life, but maybe even as we're talking about this, it's kind of bringing up things in your head. It's circumstances that exist right now that you might look at and say, oh, if this one thing were different, then I wouldn't feel as anxious or as insecure as I do right now.
And I noticed too, we were talking about this with our kids, is that, we often see other parents, and I've seen mums do it, but even as a dad, I've seen it as well with other dads doing things with their kids, and I start feeling insecure, like, oh, I can't do that, or I don't do it that way, or
there's like the dad who wants to like coach all the sports teams. You know what I mean? We have a friend who he's convinced, like, I'm gonna coach all my kids' sports teams, and he's going to be great at it.
Right.
And when I think about doing that, I'm like, there's no way I could possibly do that. And if I tried, we would lose every game, and then that would just be the worst.
Yep.
And it's that idea, kind of what you're alluding to, is like, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
Which is the beginning, I think, to a huge understanding as far as why your external circumstances are affecting you or making you feel insecure.
Right.
Is because I feel like I should be or should have what someone else has, or be who someone else is.
Right.
And that's the beginning of kind of an understanding for me to help me navigate out of some of the insecurities that I feel triggered by my external circumstances. Because I can look at someone, I can look at something and feel like, I should, why don't I have that? Why can't I do that? Man, why can't I be a dad like that? Why can't I make money like that? Like, that guy's not smarter than me.
Right.
Like, how is he that much more successful than I am?
Right.
Like, there's all kinds of different things that want to trigger my insecurities externally. But the beginning of it is understanding, but that's not me. But I'm not them.
And here's the truth bomb: is they're thinking the exact same thing about us.
No, right?
I swear that's the truth.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's hard for me to point that out or to realize that for me. But it's easy it's almost obvious if you see it going on in another setting. With someone else. With right? I have a really good friend of mine who's. We were talking just the other day, and they were talking about how they don't feel like they belong in this certain group with other people. And I'm like, they're all intimidated by you.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that you don't belong. It's that like they're all intimidated by you, and you're sitting over here intimidated by them.
Yep.
And like, it's like everything that you're feeling is not make believe, because I think your feelings are real. But everything that you're feeling isn't true.
It's not true.
Like it's not true. So, but it's so funny about how those things will paralyze us.
They absolutely do paralyze us, and they in a paralysis, whatever the correct word there is, they stop us from taking action on our dreams, our goals, our kindness to others.
Yeah.
And frankly, we become less of a person, less of an impact in the world, because we are paralyzed by this idea of someone else's.
Yeah.
Is
and I don't want to beat up social media, because you guys are probably listening to this on some sort of social media platform, probably. But
it's a tool.
Yeah. I'm the type of person who I don't really engage a ton in social media. Like I try to use it for very specific things,
Right?
Because I know my own tendencies.
Yeah.
Like I'm very competitive. And that's a very nice way of saying that I can get jealous.
Right.
But I know that that's bad for me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of remove myself from a lot of social media stuff, and I use it very particularly.
I try to do the same.
But because I just know, I know how those external things will make me feel insecure.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's like you said, the reality is it's not true. Like it's just not true.
It isn't true.
So that's the external side. But another thing when it comes to insecurities, sometimes I feel insecure that isn't necessarily triggered by my external circumstances. It's just me. Right. It's just like, I don't think I can do this.
Yep.
Right. I don't think I'm able to do that.
And so where does that come from? What's the path that got you to that thought? Because I've got there as well many times.
For me, I think a lot of times it kind of lands with the fear of like the unknown. You know, like whether it's the fear of missing out on something or just the general, like I don't know what will happen if I make this decision.
Right.
And ultimately for me, it's probably driven by the fear of failure.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people experience: the fear of failure, the fear of just some unknown thing that might happen, or I might miss out on something.
There you go. And the evidence is, well, I've tried these things in the past and I've failed.
Yeah.
So of course I'm going to fail again.
Yeah, I got a great track record of failure.
Yeah.
Like I got a vast portfolio that I can show you.
Huge.
But ultimately, like when it comes to that, like for me as a pastor, like you are out of your mind if you don't think that I don't battle insecurity when it comes to the decisions that I make.
Yep.
Because the decisions that I make aren't just going to affect me. They're not just going to affect my family, but they're going to affect the family that God is building here together with us at Wellspring.
Absolutely.
And so the decisions that I make of what we're going to talk about or how we're going to do something.
Yes.
Like
they have an impact.
Yeah.
For good or bad.
Yeah. All kinds of decisions that we make. And so I feel like it's that fear of the unknown or the fear of missing out or the fear of failure.
Or the fear of rejection.
Yeah. It triggers a couple things in us that are responses to our insecurity, right? It's like the fight or flight mentality. And so there's either I'm going to fight through this,
right?
You know, which might be good, you know, it depends on how you're fighting.
Yeah.
Might be good. Then there's the flight mentality of like, I'm just not, I'm going to completely switch directions. Or you know what, this is too much pressure. I'm going to go do something else.
Yep.
And then I think also though, it can trigger kind of like the freeze.
Yeah.
Like there's fight, flight, and then like the one that no one talks about, like just the freeze. I'm not going to do anything.
Yep.
Because I'm so insecure.
Right.
I have so much self-doubt.
Yep.
That I'm not even going to move.
Right.
And I
That's
think
horrible. That's horrible.
I think there's lots of people who feel stuck. And the reason why they feel stuck is because they've allowed their insecurities to just freeze them in their tracks.
Yeah.
And there's probably something that they should have started that they just haven't yet. you know,
Because of these fears.
yeah, I should have started doing this, or I should stop doing this, whatever that is, and you're just frozen,
Right.
ultimately because of your insecurity.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think most people fall into that category of the freezing, of not taking the action because of the fear. I think, you know, you mentioned too that fight piece too, and I think we all know folks who kind of, you know, man up but come in like a bull in a china shop and just destroy everything because I've got my goal and I'm just going for it.
Yeah,
But
I did this.
They have perhaps zero or minimal awareness of what damage they're doing along the way, and
I laugh
we
about
often
that,
hold those people up high as, oh, look at him get stuff done, but you know, we don't look at the damage behind. So there is a place here that when we're moving forward, that we have empathy and understanding and relationships and kindness with respect with other people in doing this.
Yeah, I remember I 100% had a moment of like waking up. It was probably like 6 or 7 years now ago. And what you're describing, like, was me to a T.
I've been there.
Like,
I've been there.
Hey, if you want to get something done, I will get it done.
Done. Yeah.
Like, we need points on the board. I'll put points on the board. We're going to do this.
Yep.
And so there's all kinds of metrics that you could look at and be like, yeah, man, Brian's just killing it.
Right.
He's doing great. Except for I finally had the realization of, yeah, I'm putting points on the board. I'm getting stuff done. But I look behind me and there's just a wake of wreckage behind me. And that wreckage was people.
Yes.
And it was like, it's just that realization of like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Like, who cares how many points you score, man?
Right.
Like, look at these people.
And as you were saying, that's just as much driven by insecurity as the.
Without a doubt, what was motivating me and propelling me was the desire to prove myself.
Right. To be recognized.
Yeah,
to
because
be
I
great.
felt because I felt like I wasn't being recognized, and it made me feel so insecure.
Which is insecure. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you relate to people through insecurity,
Yeah.
what you do is you break relationships. Like, you wound people. Like, whether you intend to or not, whether the thing that you're going for is good or not, what you end up doing when you operate in insecurity is you wound people.
You do.
And most of the time, it's the people that you care about the most. And like, man, that's such a painful way to live.
Right.
That is not the life that God had in mind for any of us.
No.
Like, if I'm going to be a Christ follower, I want to try to live the same type of life that Jesus lived.
Right.
Well, the guy wasn't insecure. You know,
He knew exactly who he was.
like, you know what I mean?
He knew exactly who he was.
He never had to prove himself. Like, even when one of my favorite stories is when Jesus brings a drink to the party at the wedding in Cana of Galilee, and he's at this wedding, and his mom comes up and goes, "Hey, like, we're out of wine."
Yeah.
And he's like, "And?"
Yeah.
And she's like,
Can you help out, please?
You know.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, "No, he reluctantly.
It's not my time yet," is what he said,
it's
right?
not time yet, but and he ends up performing this, this awesome miracle that goes down.
Right.
But just his response of like, and like, so it wasn't like, he wasn't like, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity for me to prove that I'm the Messiah. Like, no miracle was ever done like that. No sermon was ever given of like, well, let me prove to you, like, that I'm this. Like, that's not how he related in the world. And to think that, like...
So that's the great example. He is the great example, right?
Yeah, but to think that, like, I've spent so much of my life relating to people through my insecurities and wounding people.
And reacting to their insecurities and being wounded.
Yeah.
And it's both ways, right?
Yeah, but realizing, to me, that's one thing that helps me move through life, whether it's being wounded or... just hardships, hard relationships and things like that, is the understanding that most people are relating to you through their insecurities.
Yeah.
And so I think all of us have had, crappy things happen to us, and you realize at the end of the day, well, this person did this thing, or they said this thing, and the reason why they did that actually has very little to do with me. It has a ton to do with them.
Right.
And that kind of helps me, one, empathize with people.
Absolutely.
Two, forgive people, because it's easier to forgive someone if you empathize with them a little bit.
Right.
And then also be able to say, I'm not better than them.
So I was just going to go there, because everything you just said can be put in the mirror and applied back at me. And when I see other people being hurt or responding poorly to me, I think it's appropriate to say what part of that outcome is because of me and because of my own insecurities.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm sure I related to that person through my insecurities.
Yeah.
And this thing probably, people probably end up getting wounded because people aren't willing to deal with their insecurities, or be transparent with one another.
Yep.
And say like, hey, when you do this thing, it intimidates me a little bit.
Yep.
Like,
or I feel my anxiety levels raising, or my palms get sweaty, or I get angry, or whatever emotion you start feeling.
For sure.
They all come up in those moments of two insecure people coming together.
And I think the only way that you can do that is ultimately realizing like, I'm not better than you. I'm not better than this person. If I was in that person's situation, I would probably react similarly.
Yeah.
Like I would probably do something similar.
Yeah.
And then when you live like that open-handed type of life, with people, it helps you deal with your own insecurities. It helps you deal with people who are insecure.
Right.
And it kind of, helps you navigate through life
Yep.
a little more. But I think that you can't do that just through practicing self-awareness or something like that. Because at the end of the day, myself...
There's more steps to go.
Yeah, myself is, what was this part of this definition? Not firmly fixed.
Yep.
I might feel that way today,
Right.
but tomorrow, like, I recognize that I'm not the firmly fixed one,
Yes.
So
here we go into the answer, right? So the answer has to be through Jesus Christ.
yeah,
Who's the rock?
I have to be firmly fixed on what is firmly fixed.
Yep.
Because it can't be me.
Yep.
Like it can't be you.
Right.
Like it can't be my spouse. It can't be my family. Oh, I'm going to do this. I talk to a lot of people, and it's definitely prevalent right now when people talk about, well, you just got to find your higher power. And it's like, okay, I understand that. But if my higher power is something that's not actually firmly fixed, where an external circumstance can change all kinds of things, then it might be higher than me, but it doesn't have a whole lot of power.
Nope.
Like I have to be firmly fixed on what is firmly fixed. And at the end of the day, for me, that's reminding me as a Christ follower that like God has an unimaginable amount of love for me.
Right.
And I can be firmly fixed on what's firmly fixed. And that's his love for me.
Yep.
That's his forgiveness towards me.
Right. And then my security, which is the antidote to the insecurity, my security comes from who he says I am.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm chosen. I'm loved.
Yeah.
I'm redeemed. I'm forgiven. I'm not condemned.
Yeah.
All of those wonderful things that he says in the Bible about me and about you and about you, that's the truth based on the rock of God and the rock of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and that's what I can anchor myself to through pain, through disappointment, through my own self-doubt and the voices and fear that swirl around in me sometime. That's what I can anchor to in the midst of circumstances externally that might be challenging, intimidating, scary, unknown.
I've got health issues. I've got money problems. I've got husband-wife problems, kid problems, relationship problems, work problems. We all have them, and some have them to greater degree than other.
Yeah.
But it's clear that the security is there and available to us in the midst of all of those deep, dark issues that we face. the security is there in Christ alone.
Yeah. And if that wasn't true, like it goes back to one of the things that I really love that Paul says in the New Testament. Like all of what we're talking about is true ultimately because Jesus rose from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like ultimately because he defeated all of my insecurities,
Right.
like all of my fears, all of my wounds, all of those things, all of my sin. He defeated all of that and rose from the grave. That's why Paul says in the New Testament, like, if Christ isn't raised from the dead, then like we're the most miserable people in the world.
Counts for nothing.
Because ultimately, I can't be fixed on anything because everything would be wishy-washy. Nothing is fixed, you know. But because of Christ, I can be fixed on that throughout pain, throughout doubt, throughout whatever external circumstance.
Right.
I have something firm that I can attach myself to and remind myself of. And so when I'm feeling insecure, when those things are happening, the antidote, the security that comes in isn't security that is generated from me or how I can elevate myself more than you or how I can motivate myself in a mirror, you know, and say all kinds of terrible things to myself to say, toughen up, you know, all that stuff, which, you know, I've done. I think motivation is a nice tool sometimes. Everybody's heard a David Goggins podcast or something like that. Like I can, you know, do something for a moment, you know, but ultimately that's gonna fade away and sometimes pretty quickly. I have to be able to push through that and understand that God's love for me is fixed. Like it is a fixed point in reality. No matter what I feel is going on around me, Christ's love for me is a fixed point. In reality.
And so here's where I've gone with that sometimes in the past, and I thought, well, everything points to Him. Everything is anchored in Him. I'm secure in Him. I only need Christ Jesus. Oh, you know what? I'm going to go sit in a mountaintop and not interact with people for the rest of my life, right? So it's almost like you come to that conclusion: is if all I need is
I just need to leave.
Right. All I need is Jesus Christ and the Lord Almighty. Then why do I even need other people? And of course, that's the not the answer. The answer is that we need one another, and in interacting with one another, we actually. Those insecurities are exposed. And that points us back to the need for Christ.
Yeah, because you're right. I do need Christ. And I love Ashley, who runs our social media. She posted something the other day, like, no one's saying that you can't be a good Christian, like, by yourself.
Right.
It's just extremely lonely.
Yes.
Like, terrible way to do that.
Right.
You know, and it's like, yeah, I do need Christ. But sometimes how I interact with Him is Christ in you. Like sometimes that's how I interact with Him.
And for all you introverts out there, you know, I'm an introvert too. I get my strength from my solitude, but I also get incredibly lonely if I'm not interacting with other people. And for an introverted personality, these one-to-one conversations can be very encouraging, very uplifting, and they can, exactly as you just said, you can see Christ through others who are followers. So,
all right, so real quickly, what do you think is a good go-to way in real life, not in just like a fancy podcast you're listening to, like online for a second, or while you're scrolling and you find something inspirational for a moment.
Right.
Like in real life, what's a way for me to speak to my insecurity, like or to navigate out of some insecurity?
Yeah. So I think the first step, and we just talked about that, is talk to somebody else. Go and process it with, and maybe not the person that's causing the insecurity, right?
Hopefully you should have someone in your life who loves you and believes in you.
There you go.
And you love and believe in, that you can sit down and go, hey, am I crazy? Like this
I'm feeling this, or this, the boss triggered me, the husband, the wife triggered me, the kids triggered me. I want to talk to somebody else.
Am I crazy?
Right.
So, and sometimes you need somebody that you love and trust for them to go, yeah, you're crazy. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you might want to look in the mirror. That's an area that you need to work on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Is there another step that you can think of? I'm putting you on the spot right now.
You are. I mean, I don't. Yes, we need to go to the Bible and to the Lord in prayer. And that's critically important. But I don't want to have this as a pat answer because it's a really, you just go and pray and read your Bible.
Go and pray and it goes away.
Yeah.
Pray hard enough and you won't be insecure.
Go read your Bible more.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. How long have you read your Bible today? And I get it. Those things, please don't misunderstand me here. Those things are critically important.
Yeah.
But if they're not processed through interaction with other believers, then I truly think we're missing out.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. All right, awesome. Well, all you insecure folks out there, thanks for tuning into our podcast. We had fun with this one. Come hang out with us Sunday mornings at the Levin Studer YMCA at 10 a.m., and we would love to hang out with you. See you later. Bye.